Okay, hi. Let's get started today, and I want to start with doing a first third. While we're doing this first third, I want you to really pay attention to your feet on the ground, the kind of contact you have with the ground through your feet. So let's give it a shot. And go ahead. Great. So we're going to spend time in this session and in the next several sessions, probably a total of 5 or 6, working on a line from the classics. And the line from the classics says something like, its root lies in the feet, its issuing is in the legs, the directing or controlling is in the waist, and the taking shape and expression is in the hands. A lot of times people look at this and they fixate on the word it. And that's what it actually says in the Chinese. It doesn't say what it is, it says it. Its rooting is located in the feet, firing, issuing, releasing in the legs, directing, controlling, governing in the waist, formation, expression, taking shape in the hands. And so rather than trying to figure out what it is the motion, or it is the qi, or it is the jin, I think it's useful to actually look at the things that it's describing us. It's describing to us a bunch of different activities or components of Taiji motion, and it's telling us that some of those are important in different places in the body. So we're going to work on these one at a time over the next set of classes. And we're going to start with the feet and the rooting. which is why when we did that first third, I wanted you to pay attention to your feet. Rooting, the word root means basically the same thing in Chinese as it does in English. Things that come out of the bottom of a tree. There's a saying, a stream has its source, or a stream comes from a spring, and a tree has its roots. A tree grows from its roots. And so the roots of a tree, the way that the tree connects to the ground. Root also means foundation and basis. So the foundation or the basis of Tai Chi movement is in the feet. Rooting is an active thing. Rooting isn't just planting your cement shoes bang on the ground and then not ever moving them. And this is something that can happen from all the posture holding, from being able to accept incoming force without resistance, as we can become kind of rigid and hard on the ground. So rooting is not about that. Rooting is about a changing relationship with ground. So we actually have to relate to the ground, and we have to let that change. When we start, we have to get our feet stable so that they're the basis and the foundation. And so we need to pay attention to that. We're going to work on that first here, and then we'll work a little bit on the changing that's happening as you go through this. And we'll see where that takes us. So one of the things that happens, everybody knows this, when you go into a 70-30, as you go into the 70-30, when you turn your waist, the rear foot pivots on the heel. And so oftentimes I'll see people where they push the heel out. They come into their 70-30 and watch my rear foot. As they go into it, the heel gets pushed out and the ball of the foot stays in place. So try that. Pick a 70-30 with any foot forward. And come into the 70-30, keeping your waist in the corner. And then at the last minute, turn your waist and make sure you pivot on the rear heel. Okay, now come back without shifting. Just turn the foot out. Turn the waist, pivot on the rear heel. And do that once more. Turn the waist, pivot on the rear heel. Now I want you to push the heel out so you really feel that difference. So coming into the 70-30, when you turn, let your rear heel push out so that you get into the end of it. You probably have to move your foot again so you can do that. Turn, let the heel push out. And now do it pivoting on the heel. Do it the correct way. Turn and bring the foot with you. So those should feel very different. What I think happens is that people are concerned about all the other things that are going on in a move. Oh, there's all of this, complication happening in the hands, and they forget about their feet. And the feet are kind of far from your head. So if you're managing everything from up in the head, in the control room, manipulating the body, they're a long way away, and so it's easy to forget it. And you just kind of end up pushing your heel out. And be careful of this. Bring awareness to it. And even people who have practiced and know to come in on the heel, I sometimes watch losing the heel at the very end. And so they'll do something like this, where they turn and the foot is turning correctly, and then at the last bit, the heel will slide out. So watch me do that again. I'm turning, I turn. Now my awareness goes to the front, and as I'm doing that, I let the heel push out. And that can happen really small. It's probably hard to see on the camera, but I can feel like my foot is stable on the ground even as it's sliding in there. So you need to be careful of that and really make sure that the feet are stable on the ground, that you understand the difference between the heel and the ball, and that you're using those correctly. So let's do a little exercise just working on this. It's the linked ward-offs. So what we're going to do is take ward-off left, and after ward-off left, you'll go into ward-off right, just like always. At the end of ward-off right, turn your waist further to the right, let your left hand drop, you'll have a ball of air. Turn back and step for ward-off left, and come back into ward-off left. And so we can loop this ward-off left to ward-off right to ward-off left to ward-off right, as long as we want. The reason I'm doing this is because it'll make you have to turn your feet in. We're doing 70-30s at 90 degrees to each other, so we'll turn our feet, and then we'll step, and we'll shift. I've got to turn my foot in, and then I'll step, I'll shift, I have to turn my foot in, and so this will give you a chance to really explore that turning on the heel and the way the feet are solid on the ground. So let's give this a shot. We'll all face the same direction, because why not? So facing towards the front, starting out in ward-off left, and go ahead into ward-off right. Notice here as you're turning, you're pivoting on the ball of the right foot. You step, you shift. As you turn, you pivot on the heel of the rear foot. Now drop your left hand, turn a little further to the right. You've got a ball of air. Turn back, pivoting on the ball of the left foot. Step, shift, turn, pivot on the heel of the right foot. Watch for any sliding at the end of it. As you come into this, you pivot on the heel. Watch for any sliding where that foot becomes non-stable, where it slides without you knowing about it. And go ahead and go slow so that you can really feel your feet on the ground, what kind of relationship you have with the ground through your feet. So you're really feeling the feet. And you feel that pivot, the waist turns and the foot comes with you. Watch for a tendency for the foot to slide a little bit at the end. Pivoting on the heel doesn't slide. When you turn here, it's on the ball. When you come into the end of the 70-30, heel, 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 no slide. Let the foot pivot on the ball. Pivot on the heel, not sliding. Run through this sometimes without me talking, so that you can really pay attention to your feet on the floor where you're standing. Okay, through it again. Ward off left, pivot on the heel. Pivot on the ball, step, ward off right, pivot on the heel. Great. Another thing that can happen that keeps our feet from being a good foundation, from having a good root and basis, is that the feet can roll. So you can end up rolling to the inside, rolling to the outside. And paying attention to the tripod will help you keep from having that happen. So you can really keep them steady and quiet on the ground. So let's do another first third. And while we do this first third, I want you to really pay attention to keeping the feet quiet and flat on the ground, not rolling, and all the 70-30s pivoting on the heel, not letting the heel slide out. So, from the top, feeling your feet on the ground, and keep feeling your feet on the ground as we go through the form. Go ahead. That right foot is solid as you shift into it. As you step, it doesn't wobble. And now pivot on the heel. Pivot on the heel. And now through this whole section, make sure that both feet stay flat on the ground. Don't let the front foot roll. Even as you sit back, the front foot stays on the ground. The ball doesn't come up. Stable, your foundation. pivot on the heel of the rear foot. And feel the left foot stable all the way through this. The right foot is stable. You're going to pivot on the heel. Make sure the front foot doesn't roll. Stay stable on the ground. Both feet stay quiet on the ground as you go through all this. No rolling of the front foot. Okay, so that's the start, having the feet actually staying stable and solid on the ground so they can be a foundation, so they can be a basis. But we said that rooting is about a changing relationship to the ground. So there's some obvious changes when you go from one foot into the other foot and back. This is pretty clear that you're changing from one leg to the other. But even when you don't shift the weight, when you stay with all of your weight in one leg, it needs to change too. So that we don't just take our upper bodies and take them like a bust and set them on a tabletop formed by our legs, and then they just stay rigid and unchanging there. And we need to have the feet on the ground should feel every little change that you're doing. So start here right at the very beginning with me, with the feet in a V, and sink into your right foot. Right away, your left foot will be emptying. Now you're not done. You don't just stay there and move your left foot. Continue to feel your right foot on the ground all the way through as you step with the left foot. And so come back to the V. Sink into the right enough that the left leg is empty. And now continue to feel your right foot on the ground as you pick that foot up, as you move it through the air, as you put it down. The right foot is very active on the ground. Do that again. Back to the V. Sinking, let the weight separate. Feel the right foot on the ground. Really feel the base of your sole on the ground. Let the other foot come up. Feel how that changes your right foot. Feel that the right foot changes as the left foot steps, and it changes as you put the left foot down on the ground. Let's do it the rigid way so you can get that. So sink and separate. Okay, now hold the whole right side steady while you move the left. And do that again. Sink, you're separated. Fix the right side and move the left. It doesn't have that dynamic nature. Come back and let it be dynamic. Sink. Feel your right foot on the ground. Notice that it changes as the left foot comes off the ground, as the left foot steps, as you put the left foot on the ground, as you sink to put the foot the rest of the way down. So that change is happening all the way through there. Let's look at it in grasp sparrow's tail. So if you start in ward off right, your feet aren't going to move. You sit back 100% for rollback, and now as you turn, feel the bottom of your left foot changing as you come back. And now here we're going to move from one foot into the other. That's pretty obvious. So just do that bit again. From ward off right, turn to the right, sit back. You're 100% back, and now feel your left foot all the way through the swing and coming back to the front. And shift into press. Just reset into ward off right. Turn and sit back. You're 100% back, so you've done the weight shift, but feel that your left foot continues to work with the ground as you turn through here. It's very alive and dynamic. Once more, ward off right. Sitting back. Feel your left foot all the way through the turn there. And back to press. So there's a lot going on in the foot specifically while you're doing this. Right now I just want you to feel the feet on the ground. We've got another video that you can find in the technique section, which is about how you actually work with the arches of the feet and the curves in the legs. So you might take a look at that at some point here. But the first important thing is to get this feeling of change happening in the legs as you do this. And notice that this is right at the very beginning here. I didn't mention this one. But when we go down into the front foot to do the first part of this turn, before we shift, you should feel your right foot changing there too. So try that. Ward off right. Down into the front foot. Right foot is changing. Now you sit into the back foot, and the rear foot changes all the way as you come through here into press. So that other video that I mentioned will talk about some of those changes that's happening in the foot. But for right now, really feel this. And the progression is you need to get your feet stable on the ground, so you need to know if you're turning on the heel or pushing the heel out. You need to keep the feet from wobbling so that when I go from white crane into brush knee, I'm not having my front foot wobble and turn. So they need to get stable. And then when you've got them stable, now you need to start feeling that they're not static. There's this changing relationship to ground. Another place we can look at this is in from shoulder strike into white crane. And so this one is quite instructive. Let's do it a couple times. We'll all face the same direction. So just go ahead and start in shoulder strike and go ahead into white crane, feeling your right foot as that happens. And come back into shoulder strike and into white crane. Feel the changing relationship that your right foot has to ground. And once more. Shoulder strike, white crane, right foot is active. So now there's a bunch of pieces in here. I'm picking this one because the right foot doesn't move. But even in the place where it doesn't move, you're still changing it. So after I've come into shoulder strike here, the very first thing I do is I'm going to sink and drop into my front foot. That's what's going to affect the shifting of the weight. And as I'm doing this, it's not just everything going down. I'm not holding all of this static. I let myself sink, and then from that, there's a motion that comes up through the body and lets the hands raise. So this, if I face the camera, when I come through here, I'll sink. You see my waist is turning slightly, and then the motion comes up through the body into white crane. When I do that, I need to make very sure that I don't disconnect myself from the ground. I'm not doing this and pushing myself out of the ground. That is a changing relationship to ground. It's a changing relationship like a breakup. I'm done with you, ground. And we want to stay in that relationship. So I sink and now allow this to come through the body as it comes up without disconnecting from the ground. So let's do that some. Shoulder strike. Okay, get just the sink first. Feel yourself going down into the front foot. Feel what that does to your leg. Let the waist turn slightly more towards the front. Come back to shoulder strike. Let yourself sink, coming down into the front leg, waist turn slightly towards the front. Facing you. Again, sink, come down into the leg, waist turns, and now let it come up into white crane. So let's do that a couple more times. Shouldering. feeling the ground, feeling the rebound come through the body, directed up into your hands. You're still connected to the ground. You didn't disconnect. Shoulder strike. Sink into the front foot. Allow the motion to come from the ground up through the body, still connected to the ground. And once more. Go ahead. So, we've got a changing relationship to the ground where we move from one foot to the other. We've got a changing relationship to the ground when we actually step and sink in order to put that foot on the ground and then follow it into it. And we've got changing relationship to the ground even when we're not shifting the weight. Even when I go from 100% and stay 100%, not static. My legs and waist are changing through that. So let's do another first third. And after we finish that, I'm going to turn it over to Beth, who's going to work further on in the form, because this is everywhere. And when we do this first third, I want you to really feel your feet stable on the ground, not sliding around, not rolling, really connected to the ground. And then I want you to see that they're changing all the way through it. Root is not static. Rooting is this working with the ground, and that's what we want to do. We want to be working with the ground as we are rooting, not rooted on a cement foundation, but a dynamic, living foundation like a tree's roots. So, from the top, I'll probably talk a little bit, but mostly this is for you to really remember and pay attention to your ever-changing relationship to ground. So start out feeling your feet on the ground. Really feel them. And keep that as we go. Go ahead. Feel your feet as we do the opening move. They're not static. Even when the feet don't move, they're still alive and dynamic. Pay attention to the right foot through here, changing. And watch how much it changes all the way through here as you swing the arm. Feel your left foot changing as you step. And now feel the right foot as you turn and step. Feel your feet on the ground, alive, dynamic, even if they're not moving. Really feel the ground beneath your feet. In touch with the tangible experience at the bottom of your feet. And close. Great. So I said at the beginning we're going to be doing this for the next several sessions. And so this is a unified thing that we're trying to get from its rooting lies in the feet, the issuing in the legs, the directing in the waist, and the expressing in the hands. We're going to work towards having that be one feeling, but you got to work on each of the bits. So spend some time, for the rest of this class, and then also during the next days, spend a lot of effort on your feet. Don't worry about the rest of it yet. And then we'll start working on the hands and the legs and the waist. So now I'll turn it over to Beth, and she'll do some more.
I'd like to look at this issue of the feet in a more complicated place, namely repulse monkey. So you know that we start with the foot at an angle in fist under elbow, and the first turn happens on an angled foot. When you step for the first of the repulse monkeys, you need to make your foot go down so that it's going to be parallel to, straight ahead. And when you complete the move, the foot pivots on the heel so that it becomes parallel to the other foot. And from then on, you need to step with your feet going right back. Now, this is not an easy thing to do. It's one thing to walk forward with your feet perfectly parallel and straight ahead. It's more challenging to do it walking backwards. Now, Chongmen Cheng tells us that we really need to do that that's an important part of opening the base of the spine when you turn. So even though I know other forms do repulse monkey with your feet angled, we are told to make sure we do it with the feet actually going straight back. So knowing where your feet are is a real challenge, particularly in a move like this one. Part of, I think, what happens is when your foot is angled, and go ahead and do this with me and you'll see what I mean, when you turn to the outside of that foot, you have a lot more turn. So just, stand on an angled foot and swing your arm and turn the waist and see how that really gives you more space to make that turn. Now, put your foot straight ahead and do the same thing. You run out of room pretty quickly. It does not have that same nice open feel. This is one of our challenges. This is one of the reasons why it helps you open the base of the spine, because you have to find the open space inside because it's not there in just the shape of the body. So stand here on a straight foot and do this a few times and feel that it's much more constrained. So try to find a way that your inside can give you the room you need to turn, and accept that you will not turn as far as you do when your foot is angled. But see what you can get. This is an awful lot like, there's this little exercise that we do all the time, the bear. It's the same thing. You're on a straight foot and you're turning toward it. There isn't a lot of room, but you want to use that same mechanism to turn, and when you do that, the feet have to stay planted on the ground. So beware of doing this move and having the foot a little bit angled, because then it feels so nice and open when you turn, and then you step and you're like, oh, right, my foot's supposed to be parallel. And then you make a change. Try to get the feet where they need to go and accept the feeling that comes with it. This will put more focus on the bottom of your foot and more challenge to not have the foot roll. When you turn, you still want all 3 points of that tripod to stay in contact. You don't want to let the foot roll. Here I'm letting it roll to help me turn more, but it's throwing off my whole structure. So get a good connection. The tripod puts you over the bubbling well at the apex of your arch there, and lets all 3 of those points become active in the turning. So let's just do this move looking at that particular situation. So from repulse monk, fist under elbow, begin. This one is nice and open, but now when you step, ball goes down, go through the front leg to put the rear foot on the ground and come through. As the waist turns, let that straighten out your feet. Stop for a moment and take a look. Be sure to look at your back heel too. Don't just look at the front of the foot. Really see that you've got your feet where they need to be. And now turn. Turning part way back. Step. And again, make sure as you complete the move that your foot goes down straight and has a good solid connection. Go ahead and take a look at it. You might overshoot some because you're trying to get that feeling, so just get it right and then turn. Feeling the ground, feeling all 3 of those points staying in contact as you make the turn. And again, step, shift. Come into the final posture, straight ahead, and take a look. Did your front foot change at all in the process? Where's your rear foot? Make sure that you're really parallel. Let's do another round of this. Turning, feeling all 3 points staying in contact. Step. Go through the front leg to put the rear foot on the ground. When the rear foot is there, you come up the back leg and settle. Take a look. And once more, turn, feeling all 3 points, keeping those 3 points connected. Step, sitting through the front foot to get the rear foot on the ground, and come into the back leg. Settle. Take a look at how you did. And take a break. So that same thing we've been looking at in some of the moves in the first third is true all the way through the form. As the moves get more complicated, so does the ability to really work with the feet also have greater demands. So one thing is the structure, and the other is the mobility, the being able to step and have the changing relationship to ground. So you may have noticed that when you stand on a straight leg and try to turn, keeping those 3 points in contact, you are changing your relationship to ground. You can try this on your own. If you just put them where you think they need to be and then put your focus somewhere else to turn, you'll see that you start losing. For me, I roll to the outside a little bit and lose that inside point on the tripod behind the big toe. So keeping those 3 points, just check it out. To keep those 3 points requires a changing relationship. It's almost a little bit like a barber pole or something, that there has to be something that's coming down into all 3 of the points on the foot in order to keep them from rolling. And when you do that, your relationship is changing. So just the fact of trying to keep your foot stable and turn doesn't allow you to just be in a cement block, but actually requires that things keep changing down there so that all 3 of those points remain. Now the other side to this is what's happening on the empty foot. So when, let's see, I'll do it this way. So I come around, the foot is flat on the ground, but I'm not using it, it's not weighted, but you want to make sure that it's really empty, it's hanging from the socket, you're not using it at all to help you make the turn, but it's just there, and you're turning away from it. So when you do that, everything stays, you're still releasing it. What happens when you turn back toward the front? There's a little bit of a yin-yang that happens. There's a changing relationship in the empty leg too. And what happens, I don't want to make a big motion, but I'm going to make it big enough that I hope you can see it, that when I turn back, it's like the sit bone drops, the knee becomes buoyant, and it takes the heel off the ground, brings me just a little bit up into the ball so that my foot is ready to step. Because if you step without freeing the leg at all, it's got it hasn't released the root because the foot is still up nice and flat on the ground. So let's look at this a little bit and take it from fist under elbow. Get a good connection down there. Really feel that tripod. Feel all 3 points in contact. Your empty foot is resting lightly on the heel. You're not putting a lot of pressure there to bring the ball up. If you leave the foot flat on the ground and then just let it rebalance around the heel slightly, that's where you want to be starting from. When you turn, you can allow that leg to relax to the ground, but it's still empty. And then when you turn back, allow it to change so that the heel comes slightly off the ground at that point. Now the foot is ready to take a step. So let it step and shift through the front leg, into the back. Turning to square off the final posture is the action that moves the foot. The foot is not being aligned from down at the foot. It's just a fact of turning the hips. So now your feet should both be parallel. Both feet are flat on the ground. The weight is resting in the left leg, and your right foot is hanging empty. As you turn, you keep the empty foot on the ground without having it roll, and you keep the full foot on the ground without rolling. When you turn back toward the front, let that rebalance your empty leg, and now the ball is ready to help you take a step. So go on and step, and shift, and complete the move. Check out your feet, fix them if you need to, and we'll do it again. And what I want to do this time is when you turn back, don't let that change. Just come back and leave the foot not changing, the empty left foot. Now, take a step. Even though there was no more weight, it's a lot more connected. Just bring that foot forward again and take a step and see the difference between stepping from a flat foot and stepping from a foot that has just so slightly come up to the ball. And the difference is kind of dramatic, I think. It really feels, I feel, go ahead and rest your legs a sec. I feel some tension even across the back here that happens when that foot tries to step back when it hasn't actually become freed. And so this rooting idea, even empty feet, are relating to ground and helping with your rooting. And so you need to be able to move the foot easily and release the root before you try to do that. And that's what's going on here. So now let's do a couple rounds of repulse monkey with both these ideas in mind. You've got the foot that you're weighted through has a good connection through the tripod and isn't rolling as you go through the motions. But the fact of not rolling it means there is a changing relationship going on. At the same time, the empty foot is also not rolling around. And as you turn back, it's not that I turn back and bring the heel up, it's that this shape plays out into the leg in a way that helps the heel come off the ground slightly, and that essentially frees your root, and then you're able to step. They say that heel has the meaning of root and ball has the meaning of mobility. So we need to be able to get to the mobile part. So let's do a few rounds of that. Make sure your left leg is free and empty, even as it's resting on the heel. And begin. As you turn, you can let it down, but don't let there be any weight in it. It pops up and becomes easy to step with. You're stepping with the foot straight. And next one. Now both feet are parallel. And it's easy to step. Continue. Settle and continue. Keeping the connection through the full leg, letting the rebalance bring you to the ball so that the step is easy. Through the ground into the back leg. And another round. Front foot has freed, and so you can take a step. Feel that you're going to step, that you're going to be on a straight leg. And next one. Freeing the heel naturally. Step straight and shift. Stop there a moment. Take a look at your feet. How'd you do? Rest your legs. So become aware of the empty foot as well as the full foot, the tendency for things to roll when the going gets tough. I mean, that happens going into single whip too. When you turn this foot, can you keep the root solid on the leg you're standing on, or does it start rolling to the outside to give you more space for the turning? And then when you shift to this leg, same thing. That tripod becomes the base for you to turn on rather than having the foot give a little bit to give you the feeling of more room. So when you use the root properly, it will limit what you can do and actually give you more room inside to do it. let's do a form, whole form. I might say a few things as we go through it, but do notice as the moves become more complicated and challenging, the same problems are down at our feet. We need to be stable on them, and we need to be able to use the ground and have the ground have a changing feeling. Stable doesn't mean I just got myself set and now I'm in cement and nothing changes till I have to step. Let the stepping be easy because the heel has freed so that it will be light and able to take the step. Begin. Now think about stepping so that your foot goes where you need it to go. Straight, parallel walking. And transition. Notice if your feet want to roll around. Do what you need to keep the 3 points in contact. And feel how that actually makes your feet more dynamic than just letting them roll around. Because the weight is being transferred through the ground in an active way. Now this section of the form really requires that your root support you. Feel how you relate to the ground. Now make sure that you feel the rear foot. And don't lose the heel. I'm told that Chengmen Cheng said a little something extra comes from the back foot in this series of moves. So make sure that your back foot is connected through the heel all the way through the movement. Keeping the left foot solid, keeping the right foot solid. Feeling your feet on the ground. The whole foot is relaxing to the ground. The bubbling well is in the apex of the arch. It is not smashed down to the ground, but all around it, let your feet release and become one with the ground. And close. Its rooting is in the feet. As you go through the form and as you go through your day, become aware of your feet.